There is a valley in northern Italy that has smelled like sulfur and iron for 5 centuries. It is quiet now, but the wealth hidden in this valley was built on the blood of almost every major conflict in European history. While kings lost their crowns, while entire empires collapsed into dust, and while the map of the world was violently redrawn over and over again, one single family sat quietly in the background, profiting from it all. They didn't care who won. They didn't care about ideology. They only cared about one thing: making sure that whoever was fighting with their equipment. This is not a story about morality. This is a story about the cold, ruthless mechanics of building an empire that outlasts governments, outlasts borders, and survives for 15 generations. It is the story of the Beretta dynasty. Most people know the name, but very few understand the absolute, unshakable discipline it takes to keep a family business alive for 500 years in the most dangerous industry on earth. To survive that long, you have to be willing to do things that most people find uncomfortable. You have to remove emotion from your decisions. You have to look at a changing, chaotic world and find the one constant you can exploit. If you want to understand how real generational wealth is built, not the kind that lasts a decade, but the kind that lasts half a millennium, you need to study what happened in Gardone Val Trompia in the year 1526. Back then, a man named Bartolomeo Beretta received a very specific order. The Arsenal of Venice needed 185 arquebus barrels. It was a massive contract. The receipt for that transaction still exists today, carefully preserved in the family archives. That single piece of paper is the foundation of an empire. But getting a contract is one thing. Surviving the centuries that followed is something completely different. Think about how many companies fail in their first 5 years today. Now imagine trying to keep a company alive through the Renaissance, the fall of the Venetian Republic, the Napoleonic Wars, World Wars I and II, and the Cold War. How did they do it? They did it through a principle that most modern entrepreneurs completely ignore: brutal, unapologetic neutrality. Before we go deeper into exactly how they navigated the most volatile periods in human history, let me ask you a question. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think it is possible to build an empire of this magnitude today without compromising your personal morals? Or is ruthlessness simply the price of admission for a 500-year legacy? The Berettas understood early on that taking sides in politics was a quick way to lose everything. If you back a king and that king is overthrown, your business is burned to the ground. But if you simply provide the tools of power to whoever holds the gold, you become indispensable. During the countless wars that tore Europe apart, the Beretta forge kept burning. They perfected the art of manufacturing firearms. They didn't just make weapons, they made the best weapons. And because they focused obsessively on the quality of their product, demand never stopped. But their greatest test came when the map of Europe began to shift violently. When Napoleon Bonaparte conquered Venice at the end of the 18th century, he didn't destroy the Beretta factory. He did what every smart conqueror does. He used it. He forced them to produce weapons for the French army. For many families, this would have been a moment of pride or a moment of nationalist resistance. For the Berettas, it was simply business. They adapted, they survived, and when Napoleon was eventually defeated and the region fell under the control of the Austrian Empire, what did the Berettas do? They started making weapons for the Austrians. This is the psychological separation that defines empire builders. They do not tie their identity to the fluctuating chaos of the outside world. They tie their identity to the survival and expansion of their own domain. I want you to pause for a second. Think about your own life, your own business, your own goals. How often do you let external politics, public opinion, or the drama of other people dictate your moves? Hit the like button if you've ever caught yourself getting distracted by battles that weren't yours to fight. The Berettas never fought battles that didn't pay them. They armed the people who did. By the time the 20th century arrived, the scale of warfare had changed. World War I erupted, and the Italian military desperately needed sidearms. Beretta stepped up. They designed the model 1915 pistol, a weapon that became iconic. The war made the family incredibly wealthy, but it also brought them to the attention of the world stage. Then came World War II. Italy was under the control of Mussolini's fascist regime. Beretta was mandated to produce weapons for the Italian army and their Axis allies. The factories ran day and night. They produced hundreds of thousands of firearms. But as the war turned and the Allies pushed into Italy, the situation became incredibly dangerous. In 1943, German forces took direct control of the Beretta factory. The family was now producing weapons for the Third Reich. But simultaneously, behind the scenes, there are historical accounts suggesting that Beretta weapons were secretly finding their way into the hands of the Italian partisans, the very people fighting against the Germans. Whether it was a deliberate strategy of hedging their bets or simply the chaotic reality of war, the outcome was the same. When the war ended and Italy was in ruins, the Beretta factory was still standing. The family was still in control. This level of survival requires a ruthless kind of discipline. It requires a family structure that is completely unified. For 15 generations, the Beretta family has passed the company down, usually from father to son. They have strict rules about succession. They do not let outside investors dilute their control. They do not let family drama tear the company apart. This brings up a fascinating point about modern wealth. We live in an era where everyone wants to build a startup, get venture capital funding, and sell the company in 5 years. We celebrate the quick exit, we celebrate the founders who cash out and walk away. But is that really an empire? If you want to build something that lasts, you have to think in decades, not quarters. What do you think is the biggest mistake modern entrepreneurs make when trying to build long-term wealth? Share your thoughts in the comments, because I read every single one, and the difference between short-term cash and generational wealth is a mindset shift most people never make. The Berettas never cashed out. They never sold their name to a conglomerate. They kept the forge burning. In the post-war era, they realized that relying solely on military contracts was risky. Peacetime means lower profits, so they diversified. They expanded aggressively into the civilian market, the sporting market, and law enforcement. In the 1980s, they achieved one of the greatest corporate victories in the history of the arms industry. The United States military was looking to replace the iconic M1911 pistol, a weapon that had served them for decades. The competition was fierce. Every major firearms manufacturer on the planet wanted that contract. Beretta entered their Model 92 pistol. It was tested brutally, dropped in mud, frozen in ice, buried in sand. And it won. The Beretta M9 became the standard issue sidearm of the United States Armed Forces. An Italian family company, operating from the same valley since the 1500s, was now arming the most powerful military force in human history. That is not luck. That is the result of 500 years of compounded competence. It is the result of a singular focus that refuses to be distracted by the noise of the world. If you've watched this far, it's because you understand that real power isn't flashy. Real power is quiet. Real power survives. If you want to study the mechanics of wealth, discipline, and empire building, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We don't do generic motivation here. We break down the actual strategies used by the people who move the world. Subscribe now, and let's get back to it. The story of Beretta forces us to look in the mirror and ask a very uncomfortable question. What are you building that will outlast you? We spend so much time worrying about the next 5 months or the next 5 years. But the people who shape history think in generations. They plant trees knowing they will never sit in their shade. They build structures, rules, and disciplines that their great-grandchildren will follow. The Beretta family didn't survive because they were lucky. They survived because they were adaptable, ruthless in their neutrality, and absolutely uncompromising on the quality of their work. They understood that the world is chaotic, that empires rise and fall, and that the only thing you can truly control is your own forge. You don't need to be in the business of war to apply this mindset. You just need to decide what your forge is. You need to decide what you are going to master so completely that the world has no choice but to come to you, regardless of the economic climate, regardless of the political situation. Stop playing the short game. Stop looking for the quick exit. If you want to build an empire, you have to embrace the discipline of longevity. You have to remove your ego, adapt to the shifting landscape, and ensure that when the dust settles,
your foundation is the only one left standing. The valley of Gardoni Val Trompia still smells like iron. The forge is still burning. Now, go build yours.